Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to Ahoy today. My name is Andra Rinnensland, pronoun she, her, or z here if you're feeling fancy. I'll be talking about queer resilience on the social web and hopefully talking into the mic correctly. Bear with me. Yeah, so just a couple quick content warnings. I'll be talking about transphobia and mental health topics, and I might swear even a little bit, so CW for all of that. God, what are they doing giving me a slot this early? This is more CWs than a Mastodon post. Don't worry, I'm not here to depress you. I'm here to energize you. I'm here to call you to action. I talk about the queer community here, but we're not the only community that's experiencing oppression in 2025. And in 2025, the sense that I've gotten is that we're all desperately needing some resilience right now. So hopefully everyone can take something from this talk. How do I navigate? There we go. So a bit about me, in case you're unaware. I'm a Blue Sky early adopter who had the batshit crazy idea of creating a custom feed with the world's news media. My requirements for the feed were that the news orgs self-verify by setting their handles to their domain name, and also produce original journalism. Somehow, despite my best efforts, it's managed to become the primary source of news on Blue Sky. It manages to have about between 100 and 120,000 daily average users. It's hosted on grays.social, which I've used to start monetizing it by adding a limited curation of promoted posts. I've run about half a dozen campaigns so far. It's small, but it's a start. I'm also the creator of XBlock, which is the first third-party moderation service that was rolled out on Blue Sky. It's a third-party labeler that adds basically content warnings to screenshots of social media screenshots for instance, Twitter or Truth Social or things of that nature. I think it's a very good mental health tool for users on the platform. I'm also working on Bluemoji, which is my kind of stalled attempt to add custom emoji on Blue Sky. I'll get back to that eventually, maybe when the world's a little bit less terrible. Yeah, I'm andra.com on Blue Sky. Oh, thanks. Cool. Is this a little bit better? Yeah, it's a little bit better. Cool, I'm not cutting out as much, great. And yeah, so I occasionally write a blog on my eponymous blog, andra.com, but mostly I just blog on, or just microblog on Blue Sky. Sic transit gloria, go subscription fees, whatever. I do all this development work so I can effectively do better writing, do better journalism. I kind of think that you really need to build things using a technology to really understand its vibe, and that's a big part of why I build all these things. So I wrote this presentation on Easter Sunday, so please forgive me if this comes off a little bit more like a sermon than like a tech talk. The quote on the screen is from Canadian post-punk band Z Silvermount Sound Memorial Orchestra, their track Built Then Burnt, Hurrah Hurrah, which is a track I always play whenever I suffer some kind of political defeat in my life as a immigrant trans woman in the UK, which is frequently. The track starts with a child's voice speaking a monologue, which goes something like this. To brothers and sisters, to your enemies and friends, why are we all so alone here? All we need is a little bit more hope, a little more joy, a little more light, a little less weight, a little more freedom. In the utterly horrifying first quarter of this year, and it's been, particularly for the trans community, a horrifying start to the year, I think we all need a little bit more joy, a little bit more light, a little bit more hope, a little bit more freedom. Let's focus on the little less weight line for a moment. Here's what weighs on me. This map is one of a series by Aaron in the Morning talking about the legislative impacts of anti-trans legislation in the US right now. Some parts are definitely like do not go zones, Texas and Florida especially. I'm not going to go too deep into detail of what's happening in the States right now. If you're not aware, you should follow Aaron in the Morning or Assigned Media or QueerAF. But yeah, it's scary out there. I'm from Canada originally. I now live in the UK, but I'm originally from Canada, and also spent some time in Idaho. I've crossed the American border like dozens and dozens of times. Going to AtmosphereConf a few weeks ago was the first time I've ever been genuinely concerned crossing the American border. And that was in Vancouver, on Canadian soil as a Canadian citizen. If I'm feeling that much anxiety about the state of affairs in the US right now, can you imagine what it's like to be a trans kid in Florida, a trans kid in Texas? The transgender community is the subject of a global moral panic. We are in crisis. The forces arrayed against us want to see us erased from public life. It's not that much of a stretch to see they want to see us gone. I'm not an American trans woman. I'm a British, at this point, trans woman, and I have my own set of things to worry about. A week ago today, basically, the UK Supreme Court unilaterally, unanimously declared that I'm neither a woman nor a lesbian, and in one fell swoop, effectively denied me my gender identity as well as my sexual identity. This week is Lesbian Visibility Week, and I want to make it clear in no uncertain terms that I'm not going to let a room of disconnected, old, privileged people tell me what my sexual identity is or what my gender identity is. I'm a legal woman, and I'm a legal lesbian, and I'm super proud of being both those things. Thank you. How did we get here, though? The chart on the right is the number of articles published in the UK media about trans people since 2012. It goes all the way to 2022. I wasn't able to find a more recent chart, but you can kind of see starting around 2017 a massive spike in the number of articles published about trans people in the UK media. At the moment, there's about 5 or 6 a day published. Almost none of them are written by trans people. Almost all of them are negative. Although the British public remains broadly in support of trans rights, there has been like a massive rollback, particularly since Labour took power. They are trying to push a little bit more to the centre and kind of court more of the Tory vote, which has kind of, in conjunction with the moral panic being presented by the British media, has been terrible for my community. Me and my friends struggled to find medication. We had to fight the NHS to get renewals. We half-heartedly plan escape routes in case things get really, really bad. We lose sleep at night waiting for the other shoe to drop. We protest in the tens of thousands like we did last Saturday, and politicians largely ignore us and pretend we're just an inconvenience. But we're not going away, and we'll keep fighting. So let me bring us back a little bit, because we're here for a conference about social media and about decentralized social media in particular. And I'm sorry to be such a huge downer for the first bit of that, but I think it's important because social media is important, especially for people like me. It's more than just a website or an app that we use to waste time. For trans people like me, social media is where we find our community. It's the shoulder we cry on every time life punches us in the teeth. For many of us, especially for those from rural communities, like the one I grew up in, it's sometimes the only place where we can legitimately be ourselves. It's more than just a thing that queer people do online. It's a lifeline for my community. I honestly wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the open social web. In 2017, I stumbled across Mastodon, and I started spending a lot of time on Mastodon, and that's how I started meeting other trans people. It's the first space I ever took selfies for. It's where I learned to navigate queer communities. It's where I learned to shut up and listen to people. To seriously think about the words that I say. I grew up in a small rural Canadian town and in a very evangelical household, and I didn't have a single queer influence growing up. It took me about my 30s to discover people actually like me, who felt and thought like I do. To get to know people like Zoe and Mira, rest in peace, both of them. These experiences really helped me forge my identity. And it gave me the courage to come out as a somewhat clocky, 6'3", neon green wearing, middle-aged trans woman in the extremely trans-hostile British media where I work. And I'll be forever grateful for those experiences, even though Mastodon's completely understandable hostility towards news media is kind of what ultimately drove me towards Blue Sky. particularly like the Macedon queer community's hostility towards news media. That's another story for another time. So here's a version of a question I asked on Blue Sky this week. What does queer resilience look like during a time when our very existence is under attack? I got some really good responses, both from users on Blue Sky as well as people in my life. I pulled out some themes from those responses in the hope that doing so can help us build better tools and communities and organizations. And as the primary tool that the queer community uses to communicate and build community, how can social media foster queer resilience? And how can we make social better for not just queer people, but for everybody? The first of these themes that I'm wanting to discuss is expression. Some of us build tools for social media. TypeScript is my passion. Others use social media to distribute their music, some their photography, some showcase their recipes, some showcase their paintings, their pottery. For many trans people, dressing up, being able to dress up and post selfies of ourselves is kind of how we find our sense of style. It's how we develop our sense of identity, our sense of fashion, because we actually have an audience that's not going to like beat the crap out of us just for being ourselves. We need these public spaces, dangerous as they sometimes are, because they're still a hell of a lot more safer than wearing makeup in a small rural community for the first time. And for the record, NSFW content and lewds are also a form of queer expression. For many of us, it's the first time we feel comfortable expressing our bodies. It's in our bodies. In my mind, NSFW trans content is the sign of a healthy social network. There was a moment on Mastodon, kind of like earlier towards like 2018 or so, where there's a lot of trans nudity on Mastodon, but then Gab joined the Fediverse, and all of that sort of receding. There was a sense of danger suddenly kind of being able to post that content on Mastodon. And when queer people no longer feel comfortable expressing their bodies in this way, I think something deeply intrinsic to the soul of social media is lost. Because trans bodies aren't just political, they're profound, they're sexual, they're expressive. Blue Sky has this automated labeling system that labels nudity, and it gets a lot of flack from the trans community, but I think it's kind of like a decent midway point between CWing everything like we have on the Fediverse and just completely prohibiting all kind of NSFW content like you have on like Meta's platforms. And so it's great because like a lot of people the trans community can still, publish things on Blue Sky that is expressive for them, but it also means that people who want to avoid that content have the ability to do so using the built-in moderation tools. It has always been and will always be fairly dangerous to post photos of yourself as a trans person on a social network with a public fire hose. We desperately need private accounts and private posting on Blue Sky. There are a few initiatives to try and improve that. Rudy from Black Sky is working on something called Cypher, which is an attempt to create local-only posting similar to how the hometown Mastodon software kind of works, and I think that's just brilliant. I'm hoping it's a useful stopgap until first-party private posting or like at least audience grouping posting is more of a thing on Blue Sky. And honestly, everything that Rudy and Black Sky does is really like inspiring. I draw a lot of inspiration from the work that they do, and I think everyone at North Sky, which I'll be talking about in a little bit, draws inspiration from what Black Sky is doing. Queer resilience is visibility. Trans users continue to provide an enormous center of gravity for conversation and discourse on the platform. And I think that's important because in an era where bigots are working tirelessly to remove trans people from public life, being able to live our truth so vocally and so visibly is nothing short of radical. I took political science during my undergrad, and Hannah Arendt's Origins of Totalitarianism is something that weighs very heavily on my mind in 2025. In it, she describes how one of the conditions for genocide is to remove a group from public life, to force it to withdraw into itself, and be insular, present them as pariahs. If the intense lack of trans voices in the media is intended to make the trans community look like an inconsequential fringe issue, not deserving of sensitivity or column inches, then the sheer vibrancy of trans culture on Blue Sky stands apart as an unqualified reminder that the trans community has always been here and we're not going away. I think it's also really cool that with my newsfeed, I'm able to uplift queer voices such as Queer AF, which is a UK trans-focused media source. I'm working with them next month for Trans History Week to try and promote some of their posts and give them a wider audience. And I think it's really cool that I'm able to do that by running a newsfeed on Blue Sky. Might even get some cool analytics out of it, who knows. Queer resilience is also connection. It's feeling a kinship with people you relate to, who you come back to day after day. It's the relations you create with people on these platforms and who you talk to day in and day out. And sometimes we argue, sometimes we discuss, and we fight back and forth trying to imagine the world that we want to create together. And I think that's important because creating a homogenous worldview and forcing it upon people isn't what the queer community does. It's what fascists do. And by having this open discourse where we discuss the world we want to create, I think it's a good thing. As well, when you grow up in like a small town, or when you live in a small town, even if you're all grown up, and you don't have any queer friends, and you're a million miles away from a major urban center, then connecting with queer people in a big city can be like a lifeline. It's you see their parties and their happenings and their protests, and that can save you in some ways. It can help you dream of a way forward. It's also a place where you can go for emphatic virtual hugs whenever life kicks you down or you have a really bad day, which as a trans person in 2025 is frequently. We need this connection as a community. I'm not overselling it when I say it's a lifeline. This connection saves lives. It keeps people moving forward and keeping them thinking of a brighter day. Lastly, it's resistance. Social media is where we learn how to fight back. It's where we share our battle anthems, share our strategies, share our protests. It's where we finally get a chance to respond to all the voices in the media talking about us and where we're not given a voice ourselves to speak. It's where we fight back over and over and over, day in, day out, and try and like create a sense of what we want this world to be like. And yeah, sometimes that anger is a bit misdirected. I have thoughts about how a lot of the anger directed towards journalists, centrists, center-left politicians is perhaps a bit unhelpful, but I can also understand where so much of that frustration and that anger kind of comes from in my community. It's because we're not given a voice in so many different avenues. So yeah, social media is where we create the resistance, where we create a sense that we can push back and we will push back. So I'm going to talk a little bit about green shoots, which is a idea that I'm trying to get it rolling. It's a attempt to monetize my news feeds. I'm wanting to get roughly 2% ad revenue on, 2% ad saturation on my feeds, which is about one promoted post every 50 or so posts, so basically one feed load. I'm wanting to direct about a third of income from my monetization into this trust that I can then distribute to third-party AT Proto projects like North Sky, which I'll talk about in a second, but also just kind of any third-party atmosphere projects that are benefiting the community, and particularly ones that focus on moderation, particularly ones that focus on improving life for the LGBTQ community on Blue Sky. Since my last talk about 3 weeks ago, I've monetized my feeds. I've run about 3 or 4 small campaigns, earned a whopping $160 so far, 100 of which I've donated to North Sky, and I think it's a good start. We don't have any, myself and the people I'm working with at Gray's, we're not ad industry people. We don't have a lot of ad industry connections. We're basically starting from scratch on all this. But what I've seen from my initial attempts to run campaigns on the feed is that there's something here. I think it would be a really powerful force for instance, newspapers wanting to run subscription campaigns. It would be a very good place to run those, and hopefully I can get some data that shows that advertising on the newsfeed can lead to subscriber converts. The initial signs are very hopeful, and I'm starting to feel out what works and what doesn't. And I think that having regular advertisers on it would be transformative, and I can see it being a useful tool for helping convert newspapers and helping newspapers convert feed viewers into subscribers. Also, last talk I did, I discussed North Sky a little bit, which is it's a Canadian co-op that is attempting to co-locate PDSs in Canada and also start to create our own infrastructure around AT-Proto and, AT-Proto and Blue Sky. Since the last talk I did, we've managed to incorporate as a co-op. We're starting to set up PDSs. Our migration tool, which I'm building the front end for, is starting to get towards testing. We're getting very close to sending out like the first invites. I'm not wanting to put a timeline on it. I'm also not wanting to speak for the other members of the co-op. I'm a humble front-end developer for it. But they have given me the ability to say that these are some of the priorities that we have looking forward and kind of what we're sort of thinking about over the next few months. I think North Sky is very important, and I'm really proud to help fund it because we're not really sure what Blue Sky PBC will do if threatened by the Trump administration about trans content. Lawrence mentioned the example of Turkey and stifling political dissidents by having like a labeler. Who knows what will happen if the Trump administration directly tries to impact Blue Sky around the topic of trans content. I think hosting PDSs in Canada is a good bulwark against that. I'm looking forward to the Indie Sky talk tomorrow, the workshops that we're going to be having to discuss things like adding relays in Europe. I think that's a really exciting idea, and I love the idea of setting up infrastructure in Europe, kind of outside of the remit of Blue Sky PBC and decentralizing this technology a bit further. I think this is important, and if it comes to pass that the American government decides that, under the guise of protecting children and wholesale wiping the trans community off the internet, we need to have servers located somewhere where trans content is protected as the free speech that it is, whether it's journalism and critique of capitalism, critique of genocide, critique of the Trump administration, or merely questionable taste, shitposting, and sexy selfies. I think it's all important speech, and I think it should be protected. Thank you. I know that was simultaneously a lot and also not much of anything, but perhaps gives you a sense of why I'm so passionate about what we're all doing here. I'm always happy to talk to anybody about any of the projects that I've worked on. I don't think we have time for questions because I'm already a bit over, but come find me if you want to talk about the newsfeed or Bluemoji or XBlock or any of the other things I work on. Thank you.